Welcome to Matters That Matter. In today's episode, we are going to focus on the issue of food security and how to make farming attractive and paying in this country. We have the capacity to make a living and create wealth out of agriculture. But very few young people want to venture into farming, and this is for good reasons. There are reasons for this state of affairs. The question is, how do we make farming attractive and profitable in Kenya? Food security is one of President Uhuru Kenyatta's flagship projects that will ensure his legacy. Further, agriculture is a devolved function, and one expects heavy investment in order to produce enough food for this country. Unfortunately, this is not happening. While many people, including myself, do farming as a side hustle, it has to be made a serious business venture. This will employ millions of young people. For sure, side hustles are legitimate ways of making ends meet. But this is not everything that we need. A good strategy will see two things happening: Kenya becoming food sufficient and creation of employment for the many young people who remain jobless in this country. It is shameful that 56 years after independence, we are still a food deficient nation. So, what do we do to make Kenya food sufficient and create wealth for the nation? First and foremost, we need to institutionalize agricultural extension services. Many farmers decree lack of support from both national and county governments. They nostalgically look back on the 70s and the 80s when agricultural extension officers would provide free support to them. They tell of the time when artificial insemination services were provided by government free of charge. They talk of the time they were guaranteed of markets for their grains at a reasonable price. The idea of cheap imports of grain from countries where farmers are subsidized dominate discourses on how politicians and technocrats have conspired to pauperize the people. A very important aspect that we should pay attention to is to invest in agriculture. The kind of frustrations that the ordinary farmers encounter do not augur well for the sector. My humble opinion is that we can hardly achieve food security if we continue with the model we have adopted. We need to care more about our farmers, and this is very important and is not even negotiable. Kenya has, for example, not met the 10% target of the total government spending on agriculture as agreed on at the African Union meeting in Maputo in 2003. Only a small fraction of the total expenditure on agriculture is devoted to supportive spending on rural education, extension services, and infrastructure. Another equally important step that we need to take is to incentivize farmers. Our policies hardly reflect the desire to promote the development of agricultural sector. A good example of this are the new proposed regulations on agricultural industry that have taken farmers by surprise. The plight of maize farmers exemplify the desolation of majority of the farmers. Some experts argue that to produce 1 bag of maize costs 2,150 shillings, and government buys the maize at about 2,500 shillings, or the farmer sells the maize at just about 2,300 shillings. With these prices, farmers have no reason to continue growing maize as a commercial venture. In Western Kenya, which is the breadbasket of Kenya, maize is grown as a culture and not a business. There is need to seriously address the plight of these farmers. Otherwise, food security will remain a pipe dream. An equally important step that we need to take is to make farming fashionable. The net effect of the farmers' despondency is that youngsters do not want to study and venture into agriculture. In all our universities, agriculture courses are undersubscribed. Now that we have been talking about scrapping courses that are not attractive, agriculture could be the first one to go. Indeed, some universities are even contemplating closing down departments of agriculture. But the irony here is that Kenya is an agricultural nation. Why is agriculture not attractive to young people? Youngsters despise farming, and yes, for good reasons. They have seen their parents impoverished by practicing agriculture. That is why we need to address this matter urgently. Another important point to note is that we must empower small-scale farmers. To achieve food security, the government needs to invest more in agriculture. The African Development Bank, in its 2016-2025 strategy for agriculture, advises African governments to empower small-scale farmers for sustainable agricultural output. This calls for the government to give farmers access to improved soil fertilizers, credit, and markets. Another important issue that we need to address urgently is the whole idea of value addition. Efforts should be made to avail resources for establishment of value addition outputs. The youth should also be empowered with knowledge and skills. More importantly, government should develop policies and strategies that address the needs of the small-scale farmers and enable them to benefit from research findings. I think the agenda on food security cannot be achieved with the policy framework in existence. We need something akin to a Marshall Plan that should aim at making this nation food secure. On that note, we come to the end of Matters That Matter. In today's episode, we focused on the idea of food security. On behalf of my crew, Neka and Pambi, I would like to invite you to like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. I am Igara Kabaji.